On today's show, I'm going to share with you some tips on making dimensional diamonds. Let's take a look at the wall hanging I have here on the table. It's called Dimensional Diamonds, and the reason it's called that is we're going to fussy cut our pieces so that we actually see the centered design inside the diamond, then construct them into tumbling blocks. And we get the dimension from using a light fabric, a medium fabric, and a dark fabric. So let's take a look at how we're going to do that. I'm working with a completely different color scheme here. I thought it was time for a Christmas project. So I have this fabric that we'll fussy cut. I have this fabric, so I have my dark, my light, and my medium to go with these two fabrics, and we're going to fussy cut all of them. But because it is a diamond or a tumbling block, we need to cut them dimensionally and directionally. Let's take a look at this one that comes from the piece on the top. Here we have a top diamond, we call it, because it goes on the top of the tumbling block. We have a left tumbling block. It goes on the left-hand side, and we want the stems of whatever is there to go in that direction. Here we have a right-sided diamond, and again, we want the stems to go in that direction. So we have to cut them a special way. All right, let's start here with our first fabric that we're going to fussy cut with the cardinals. We're going to use a 2-inch diamond. That's not finished. We'll have seam allowances come off it. So I'm going to take the 4-inch. Now that may not make sense yet. The 4-inch diamond, place it on the fabric. And what we want to do is open the window so we can actually see the whole diamond we'll be cutting so that we can fussy cut. Now, if you're not used to the fussy cutting term, that means this design is going to be centered inside that diamond. And it's a top diamond. It's going to go on the top of the tumbling block. So right here I have a T in a circle. That means that that dotted line is right in the center of that design, and the design lines up vertically with that. But we can't rotary cut inside a shape. That's the size we want. So I'm going to take the next smaller size, which is a 2-inch, put it in here, and now I can rotary cut and have a fussy cut. And here we have the top of our piece. We would do the same thing with the red diamond. And let me just show you that piece right here. Or the green, I'm sorry, it's a red bird on a green fabric. Here we go. So we have 2 tops now cut. And let's go on now and take a look at the fabric we're going to use for the left-hand side. And that's the light colored. Okay, here we have to decide how it goes. We'll take the same size of our diamond, and this time it's a left-hand side, so we have an L in a circle and a dotted line. That goes vertically with the design, so let's find right here. We've got a design with a stem. The left lines will line up this way. Again, we put the small diamond in. Now, just a tip, if your diamonds tend to slip on the fabric, I've put some dots of sandpaper on the bottom of the small one. I find I don't need it on the larger ones, but the small piece I do. And just take this piece out. And now we'll do all of our left-sided diamonds. And let's see, that gets a little bit tricky cutting there. As long as your fingers are out of the way, you're okay. So now we have a left-sided piece, and that goes here. And on both of these, we use the same left-sided piece. So the same light color will be on both of our tumbling blocks. Now let's do our other piece for our right side. We have our Christmas trees. And let's decide which one we want here. And again, on our shape, now we have an R for the right side. So we can decide on this one, or we can come over and get two. I think I like the single one better. Here we go. We'll open that. Make sure, oh, there, we need the R lined up with that design. And put this back in, remove the larger one, and cut our right-hand side. Really makes a difference when you fussy cut to have that done. Here we have, let's see, this goes with the green. You can see how the direction of them makes a difference. If we had just cut them out anyway, we might have had our trees upside down or a little bit sideways. But by doing it this way, the design fits the actual diamond. And our other piece that we're cutting with the right side is this red piece. So those will be our two tumbling blocks. All right, now we have all of our pieces cut except some special pieces. We have on the edge, let me just go show you right here, we have half diamonds. You can't just cut a half diamond though. So what we're going to do is take our fabric, and I'll show you what we want to wind up with. That'll give you a good clue. We need a top right and a top left. Let's just put these together this way. And the way we're going to do that is to actually cut a whole diamond, but we're going to center the design on the top left or the top right. Let's move this so you can actually see it here. Here's the way we centered it for the top. If we want to do a top left, we move it over here. And if you can't visualize that, I have lines on the diamond. That would be where your diamond's going to end. So you can just put a ruler there and sort of eyeball it. And again, we'll cut the whole diamond. Because these diamonds are small, it's easier to cut the whole diamond. And we need a top left and a top right from both of our cardinal fabrics. And then what we're going to do is to come with our ruler, and this is our top, I have to turn it around, my right and my left. This is my top right. So we're going to cut this piece now 1/4 of an inch past the point. So I just put the ruler right with a 1/4 inch line right on the ruler, and I have the piece that I need. And we do that with both the top left and top right of each of our two cardinal colors. Okay, now we have most of our pieces cut. Now it's time to sew our tumbling blocks together. And I'll just put these half diamonds over here. And we have these two diamonds or tumbling blocks to sew together. And what we want to do now is a technique I call anchoring my seams. I've talked a lot about that in the series, and we'll actually do it here. Anchoring a seam means sewing all the way from the top to the bottom. Now, A lot of directions that you might find for tumbling blocks tell you to leave this open 1/4 of an inch. That tends to cause a lot of problems. And unless your tumbling blocks are always perfect, you might want to try this technique. So I'm going to take these 2 pieces and get ready to sew them together. And then these 2 pieces, our left and our right from each piece. All right, let's sew those together. And I'm going to start on a starter scrap and just pick up my pieces and start sewing 1/4 of an inch. And make sure the edges line up. And for as many pieces as I need to make, I can just pick them up and chain them. And we can sew right off onto our starter scrap. Cut our pieces apart. Now we're ready to press. Now when I do my tumbling blocks, I like to first, as I always do, press the seam exactly the way I sewed it. So we have our 2 pieces here. We'll put it this way so they look the same. Then I'm going to open my seams, or press them to one direction first, this way, from the right side. And then to make it easier to match that Y seam, I want to press those seam allowances open. So I have them pressed to one side, and I know I don't have any creases here. Now if I turn, and I can just put the iron right in here, I'll have my seam allowances pressed open. And now we're ready to do the infamous Y seam, as I call it. And that means we're going to insert our cardinal fabric here. All right, we need to give ourselves a guideline. So I'm going to put this piece right here, the green on top of the black. Now, there's no guideline as to where I'm going to stop stitching. So that tells me that's not the side I want to stitch on. Instead, I want the green underneath. So I'll start stitching here. And the green triangle or diamond underneath should line up perfectly. See, I have this seam allowance, that tab sticking out that will line up with the end of the diamond. And now we don't even have to pin. So let's go and sew this together. Again, I have a starter scrap. I'm going to sew from there onto this piece. It's lined up perfectly because those seam allowances, the ends are directly on top of each other. I want to sew down and stop with my needle directly on the seam line. That would be, if I look at this piece, the needle stops directly down here in the center of the seam. And even if you have to move it forward or back a little bit by hand, it needs to be directly on that seam. Then what we do is take our underneath piece, our green, and line it up with the next edge. And this piece will fold out just like this, so it'll lay flat. Lower the presser foot and sew to the end. And you will get lots of practice with Y seams if you sew this particular project. Let's just take a look at our piece. Well, we'll get the thread off there. Here we go. And we have, when we press it, we will have a perfect Y seam. Let's talk about the way we're going to press that, because we want it to lay flat. This is really the predominant diamond in our tumbling block. So we'll press that seam allowance toward, or I'm sorry, away from the diamond toward the left and right side. And again, I press from the right side and press. And from the back, this is what it should look like. This seam open, this one comes down on top. Okay, so after we have all of these pieces that we need, both with the green cardinal, the the red cardinal on the green background and the red cardinal on the black, then we're ready to sew into units. And the way we start that is to take it, first of all, we're going to sew 2 of these together, one with the green fabric, one with the black. We're going to add another green one right here. Now, how do I know I want to add a green one? Well, let's look at the colors that come together. Now, at this point, we should have colors that are not the same next to each other, so it makes a more interesting design. All right, we're back to our Y seam. I'm going to lay this here, and I'm going to put this single piece, single tumbling block underneath and start here. Now, when we get down to here, I'm going to put a pin in. And as some of you know, if you've been watching the shows, sometimes the pin is there so it's easier to see where that seam is. But I'm going to put it in this time to match. And we put it in right at the tip of where that point is. Let's get that fixed a little bit better here. This is probably the crucial point here, getting that in the right place. And then put it in this seam line, 1/4 of an inch from the edge, making sure it goes right to the center. And then, well, here we go. And then bring it along that seam line to the front, and it should come in to that seam line exactly. Now, we always work with our seam allowance exactly the way we pressed it. So let's go here and sew this. We'll start on a starter scrap again. So right from the end, we want to anchor that seam. And hold your fabric. It's pinned tightly. With a little practice, it should match exactly. When we get close to the pin, we will get ready to remove it. Make sure the seam allowance stays the way it was pressed. Remove it, and we sew right to the center of that seam allowance. And okay, so let's just move it. It just needs like a hair of just a part of a stitch. There we go. And again, we bring the underneath piece around, fold this piece, and line it up. Fold it and give it a tug. If it's folded the right way, it will lay flat here. And we'll sew to the end. And then we have a piece that's getting larger. Here we have a piece that goes this way. Now let's look at a finished piece because we have a few more pieces to add to it. We have a single red piece that will go right here using the Y seam technique. We have a white piece that will go here. We have a black top cardinal here, and that finishes our hexagon shape. So we make all of those that we need to, and then what we want to do is sew, first of all, the first row. And let me just add one more piece here. You can see I've got 3 already. There are 4 in the first row, but you know that's the only row we're going to sew together. So let's just take it over to our machine. It's a straight stitch, just like matching any 6-pointed star. We have a point here and a point here. So I'm going to line those up and use a pin. I haven't come up with a technique yet for doing this without a pin. If I do, I'd be sure to let you know. Let's see. I've come through the point into the point. And that's a holding pin. Now if you take another pin and pin in that same spot, but follow this time and bring it back through the fabric along the seam line. And then you can take the holding pin and turn that into the other seam. So what we really have is an X here with a pin. And if both of them follow the seam lines in the back perfectly, then your point will match. Okay, so we'll sew from the end. And your needle, as it comes to it, wants to go right down in the point where the pins, both pins go through. But don't sew over the pins. And take one more stitch, then I have to remove this one. And let's take a look at this. And here we have one row finished, and you can see where the point lines up. Pretty good. Okay, so I'm just going to press this so that my seam allowances are open. And again, we'll do the same technique. We'll press it first from the right side, all in one direction, to eliminate the creases. We'll turn it and press the seam open, and that will get ready for the next pieces, which will be a Y seam again. And let's take a look at our piece the way it is now, our first row. Well, when I first designed this pattern, I thought I could make multiple rows and sew them together, and I found out that the Y seam was pretty difficult to do that way. So what I ended up doing was to take the pieces that go in here and do each one of them as a Y seam. And then when I add this next piece here, let's put it in the right way. I come up here, it's a Y seam, over and down, and that seemed to work better. But we have an area right here that only needs a half of this, and we can't just take one of these pieces and fold it in half and do this. That's not going to work. So remember those half diamonds we cut? That's where they come in. We need to have a piece that looks like this. That will go on this side, right here. And we have a half a piece that will go here. So let's take a look at how I constructed those two pieces. Get them going in the right direction. Okay, what we need first of all is the complete tumbling block. And we need one with a black cardinal and with a green cardinal. And there should be one here. Here we go. And then what we need, see that's right here. Then we need a light color piece, a single piece, to go right here. And we need a dark piece with the Christmas tree to go here. So I would sew these two together and then with a Y seam join this. So let's just lay out our pieces. Then remember our half pieces that we cut. We need to put a green cardinal here, and it's a little bit like a puzzle, and a black cardinal down here, and that completes this piece. Let's see if we can find the pieces for this one now. We need a light piece again, and we need a red piece. As I said, it's a little bit like a puzzle, but it'll all go together. And our green half cardinal goes here, and our black one goes here, and those pieces are finished. Now we need to cut 4-inch black diamonds. No fussy cutting, just 4-inch, and they go right in here to form this border. Okay, we'll put them in and then trim them. I've included a 2-inch border strip right here down the sides. And then take a look at this border. I fussy cut the design into 4-inch squares and then cut my strip 4 inches. So with my Christmas project, my squares will look like this. My 4-inch border will go between them. Let's just fold that so you can see the border. And it just sort of gives a nice finished off square. Now to make this project, you're going to need to look for small motifs in your fabric so that you can fussy cut them the way I did. I know when you finish this project, you will be the expert on Y seams. Remember, Y seams, the secret is anchoring that seam, having the center seam allowance pressed open, and stopping with your needle down in the center of that pressed open seam. And then that's all there is to it, and I know it'll be fun. So be sure and join me on my next show when I'll bring you some more quilting ideas.
For information on today's main demonstration, call 1-800-248-KAYE. That's 1-800-248-5293. Or write to us at Kaye's Quilting Friends, Post Office Box 456, West Branch, Michigan, 48661. Please remember to specify the program number. Kaye's Quilting Friends is brought to you in part by Janome America, OttLite Technology, Clover Needlecraft, Sulky of America, and Brandy's. Our thanks for joining us for this edition of Kaye's Quilting Friends. We hope the ideas shared with you in this program will make your quilting more enjoyable. Please join us again on the next Kaye's Quilting Friends.